Thank you, Humana, and welcome everyone. Welcome to another fun Monday night with Michael's here in the community classroom. I am Chris Williams, and you know what? It's never too early to start wearing your Christmas outfits. So I have my Merry Christmas t-shirt on for y'all tonight, and we're going to have a lot of fun. We've got a lot to cover tonight, so let's just get right into it. We're going to have a real fun little painting with ho, ho, ho and Santa in a snow globe. So let's just go ahead and go overhead, Humana and Stephen. In the studio with me tonight, on my side of the fence, I have Stephen White. He's here to help moderate for the class tonight. So if you have any questions, go ahead and type them in the chat, and either Stephen will help answer them for you or relay them on to me, and we will do our best to help you along tonight. I'm going to be painting rather quickly tonight because, like I said, we have a lot to do in a very short time period. But do remember that if you feel like you're falling behind, no worries at all. Like Humana said, the class is being recorded and it will be on Michael's YouTube channel shortly after the class is done tonight. And I think it's definitely within a 48-hour period that the classes get posted. So let's go ahead and get started. Tonight, I'm going to be using the FolkArt multi-surface paints. And I want to go ahead and get several colors out onto my palette. The first color I'm going to go ahead and get out is a little pile of white. I'm using Wicker white tonight, but if you have titanium white, that's quite all right as well. So get a little pile of white if you are painting along with me tonight. If not, feel free to just sit back and watch and relax and paint along with the recording later. The red that I just put out on my palette is apple red. And then I'm going to add some orange on my palette too. And this is pure orange. I'm also going to get out a couple greens, and I have a light green and a dark green, and my darker green is Thicket. And then my lighter green is a beautiful yellowy green color, and this is called lime green. And I'm going to put a little lime green out right now. So I'll just repeat for you. The colors that I've placed out so far is a white, wicker white or titanium white, apple red, pure orange, Thicket, and our bright green here is lime green. Of course, there is a color called bright green that you could use that as well. I'm going to take my palette knife right now, and I'm going to scoop just a little bit of my white off to the side. We're going to go ahead and mix up a little bit of a flesh color. And with this, I am going to take just a tiny little tip of my palette knife with a little bit of the pure orange. You can see there's not a lot of paint on here at all. And I'm going to mix my pure orange into this little puddle of white. You don't need a lot because what we're mixing is color just to represent Santa's face. And we're going to make a very pale mixture, almost much lighter than a dreamsicle, but leaning more towards a dreamsicle orangey color. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add, just to kind of blush this up a little bit, another tiny little bit of our apple red. So this apple red is a little bit smaller in size than what our orange was. And we're just going to kind of pink this color up. And we're also now just making a very light flesh color. So with that having been made, I'm going to go ahead and clean my palette knife, and let's go ahead and just base in the little shape of Santa's face. So again, my mixture was the white, the pure orange, and a little tiny bit of the apple red. And when you look at the pattern that's already transferred here, there's just a very small little spot to represent his face. So now we just have a very basic little fleshy color right there on his face. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab another paper towel, and I am going to just wipe that color out of my brush. And let's move real quickly now onto the red areas that Santa has. So that would represent his hat here, including the long little tail, and then of course his robe or his jacket. And you can use the same brush for the smaller areas. And I'm using apple red. I didn't wipe, I just wiped the flesh color out of my brush. I did not like rinse the brush and get it wet in the water. And I'm just very quickly painting in the red of his cap. And like I said, there's a long little tail to his cap too. So let's go ahead and take care of that now as well.
Chris, what brush size are you using?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I failed to say that. I'm using a number 6. And thank you, Stephen.
Welcome.
I'm using a number 6 flat brush, everyone. And thank you for asking that. Sorry, I forgot to tell you. So I'm moving quickly here. I'm just kind of painting in the shape of his hat there with the little bit of the red, including the top of his hat and this little tail that's going out towards the end. And you can use this same brush, but you can also move up to a larger size brush. The next size I'm going to work with is a number 12. And just to kind of cover the areas in a quicker fashion, I'm using a larger brush then to then paint in the robe areas. And so I, again, am using just the apple red. And I did move up to the number 12 flat brush. And you can see as I'm painting this in quickly, I am moving my canvas around so that every single brush stroke I'm doing is easier for me rather than trying to do things backwards or upside down. I often will use the chisel of the brush, which is that very point of the flat brush. And I'll use that chisel to guide along some of the pattern lines here and then kind of go back and fill it in. You're using the chisel edge of the brush to kind of give you a shape, if you will, and then come back and fill it in or base coat it in, color book paint it in. Those are all different terms that kind of represent the same thing. So this would be like where I just used the chisel edge to kind of make that guideline of the side of his robe there, using the chisel edge again underneath his belt and around the belt buckle, down along the side and across the bottom here. So that's basically what I kind of did, was just map out the shape. And now I can very quickly fill that in. Again, still using the apple red and my larger brush. This is my number 12 flat. And we'll do the same thing on the other side of Santa's coat. So we're just kind of using that chisel edge to make a pattern line. And we're scooping around and we're painting in all of the robe. I wonder how many of you are going to be painting with me tonight. If you can take a moment from your painting and want to let Stephen know in the comments below, please do. It's always fun for me to know who's painting along. And I know Jimena told you we love to see your work when you are done painting. Be sure and use the hashtags, Make It With Michaels, Michaels Classes, hashtag Let's Paint Challenge, and you can also hashtag Plaid Crafts. And when you hashtag, that allows all of the different companies and organizations to be able to see your work all gathered together in one area. And when you hashtag, remember there's no spaces between any of the words. It all runs together. All right, I'm just about done with my robe here. When you're looking at Santa on the right-hand side, we want to go on the body of his coat, but we also want to make sure that we paint in where his arm is and around the fur here. I'm just going to let this kind of set up and dry a little bit before we do much more with our red. So I am going to go ahead and clean that red paint out of my brush. And I'm going to make sure that I squeeze out the excess moisture. And what we're going to do next is we're going to base in the 3 little sections of our tree, and we're going to base the tree in with our darker green, which again is the thicket. So in this case, I am just going to do the same thing, use my chisel edge of the brush after it's been loaded with the thicket. And then we're just going to follow these pattern lines, kind of giving yourself a guideline, if you will. And we're just going to paint in the entire section, working one section at a time of our tree. Because we want this to dry as well before we do any details on the tree. So I'm just kind of filling that in and stroking up towards that second section. So this again is our thicket. And I am just filling in, working one section at a time. And now I'm going to move on to the middle section of the tree, doing the same thing, paint on the chisel edge. And I'm just kind of making these little scallopy lines at the bottom of that section. And then coming up the other side. This is a very whimsical project. Very simple, but very whimsical, but there's still a lot of detail. So I'm hoping this will be a fun project for each of you to paint tonight and then be able to share with your friends and family as you get ready to decorate your homes for the holidays. And the third section is done exactly the same way, kind of basing in the shape. And then I'm going to stroke up towards the tip. And I'm just, when I'm doing this, another tip I'll share with you is I'm kind of laying that brush down flat. So I'm actually putting on a little bit more paint than you think I am. So this is a close-up of where we are right now. We've got his face on. We have his red of his hat and his robe on. And then we also have the tree kind of based in with the thicket. And I'm going to go ahead and clean that excess paint out of my brush. I am cleaning it. I have a brush basin off to the side, so I'm cleaning it out, and then I'm going to squeeze out the excess moisture. I see a lot of people are just kind of watching tonight, so that's nice. You'll be able to work at your own pace and your own time when you get the recording. You know what? I forgot one thing. Let's back up. While I had the green out, I should have gone ahead painted the two mittens. There's a pair of mittens here. Let's go back into our green and let's just base in our mittens. He's got a very wide thumb area. And then the four fingers in the mitten section here on both sides of his hands. He's got a thicket mitten. So let's go ahead and put our green mittens in.
Chris, we also had a good amount of people say that they were painting along with you tonight. So we love to see that as well.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, there's no wrong way to do it. So
no, exactly. I want everyone to work at their own comfort level. Sometimes starting a painting at 8 o'clock at night, or, you know, depending upon where you are here on what time zone you live in, I should say, it might be too late of a day. And perhaps if you are working during the day, maybe you're too tired. So it's awesome that these classes are recorded and then you can watch it later. So we love that. All right, now I'm cleaning my brush to remove the green from it. And I'm sorry, I didn't think to tell you to do that while you still had the green in the brush with your tree. Let's go ahead and get a little bit of black out on. Our palettes, we didn't add the black yet. And I'm using a color called Licorice. If you don't have that, you could use, let's see, if you don't have Licorice, you could use pure black. That's another color that is a black color in the FolkArt line. What I'm going to do with this is I'm going to again take a little bit of my white and I'm going to bring a little bit of this over near my black, and we're going to take just a tiny little smidge of our black on my palette knife, just a tiny, tiny little bit, not a lot. And I'm going to mix that into our puddle of white here. What I'm going to do is create like a medium gray color. This is not quite dark enough yet. I want to go a little bit darker. So I'm going to pick up just a little bit more black. And when you're mixing colors, do a little bit at a time, because it's easy to, black is such a prominent color. It's easy to go too dark very quickly. So I think I want mine just a little bit darker. We want more like a medium gray color. What we're going to do with this medium gray is we are going to base in Santa's beard. So we want to have a gray underneath when we're painting the white of his beard. So let's just go ahead and call that good right there. And I'm going to use my number 6 flat brush, load my brush with this newly mixed gray color. And I am going to, on Santa, you can see that he's got his hairline here out onto the side, across the beard, and then on the hairline to this side as well. So we're going to color in all of that area Again, using that chisel edge to kind of help you base in those areas, just like that. And then I'm going to bring this color down around the front, underneath the mustache. I am not, let me say this again, I'm not going to paint the mustache right now. For right now, we're just doing the gray of his beard and his hair. And again, just kind of swooping that color down, working around the mustache, underneath it, and then of course on the other side of his head too. So we want both sides of his hairline. And we also want just the beard area. I like when I paint my Santas, a lot of times I am painting more of a whimsical look. I like to have the Santa mustache very white and bright. And I'd like to have the beard more with a little bit of a gray undertone. All right, I think my red's drying up. Yes, it is. Let's go ahead and start working with our red now. So now I'm going to take just a little bit of my red on my palette knife, and I'm moving it to another little puddle here. And with this, I'm going to, and you can use either your Thicket or you can use your black. I'm going to use my Licorice tonight. Add a little bit of the darker color to it. Both colors are going to give you a real pretty burgundy. And I'm going to add to mine here, I'm going to add just a little bit more red. So you're just making yourself a nice little burgundy that is going to be your shading color for our red jacket. And I'm going to push a clean edge over to the side there. I'm going to clean my palette knife by pinching it between my paper towel here and then set that aside. Now there are areas on our Santa robe and hat that we're going to shade and blend. So what we want to do is do all the shading areas first, and then we'll do the highlighting. So I'm going to load my number 12 flat brush with our local color or the base color, which is my apple red. So I'm going to have apple red on the full width of the flat brush. And then I'm going to side load. I'm going to stroke up right next to this puddle here that we created of our burgundy. And so now I have a brush that has red on the one side and it has burgundy on the other side. So I am going to, with this burgundy mix, I'm going to pat color on the hat right up next to the brim, the furry brim. So I'm going to take my brush, I want to make sure you can see this, and I am going to use that burgundy, just patting that color on so that it goes right across the top of the brim. So we're kind of shading the red part of his hat. And while we're doing, so sorry, excuse me. While we're doing that, we're also going to shade down on the long ponytail part of his hat, all the way on the bottom edge. So I'm going to show you right now. So we went across the brim and then all the way down. And if you're looking at it, it's the left side and the bottom of the little tail of his hat. Now with that brush still loaded, every once in a while I'll go back and I'll side load into the burgundy and get a little bit more color. We're going to start on this, let's see, that would be his right hand or right arm. I'm going to put a little bit of that color, that shaded color next to the fur trim, right at like his wrists. And then I'm going to pat that color down the bottom side of his arm. And then we're going to take that same shaded color on the arm, right up next to where the arm meets his body. So we kind of did three ways on the arm. We went underneath the fur, down the bottom of the arm, and then right on the arm, right up next to where his body is. The next section we'll work on is this little section here of the body, and we are going to shade behind the belt and then up the side, and then we're also going to shade right by the gray that we just painted on of his beard. So again, I'm on the body. I've got my shaded color right there. I'm patting that color on right next to the belt. I'm now going to take it up the fur trim area and underneath his beard. So we have now got two sections of his robe all shaded. The third section will continue on this same side here, which is the right side. As we're looking at it, it's the left side as you look at Santa. And here we're going to shade underneath the belt line and down the fur trim all the way. So there's 3 sides of this that we're also going to shade. So I'm going to start here at the bottom, and I'm just patting that color on. Again, we still have the apple red, the local color in our brush, and that kind of helps your shading blend beautifully if you always load your brush with your base color first. And that way you're kind of working a wet on wet technique is what we call. And look how pretty that is. There's his hat and 3 sections of he's already blended and shaded. I'm going to pick up a little bit more of my apple red and continue with my shading color. And let's work on the next section of Santa, this down part here of his robe. This is going to get a little bit more shading. So we want to shade here underneath where his arm, again, I'm working on the bottom of his robe. I'm going under the arm. I'm going around the fur trim. I'm going around the mitten. Every so often, like I said, I'm picking up a little bit more color. Now we're going to go around the fur trim area. So again, just kind of patting that color on. And the last part, we're going to pat up along the bottom here of the robe. And then we're also where the little part of the robe doesn't show because of this cutoff of the snow globe, we're going to shade there. So on this bottom section, we went under the arm, around the fur, around the mitten, and then all of the fur trimmed area, and then going up the little bit that is cut off because of the glass of the snow globe. Now, for this next section up here, let's go ahead on the chest area first. We're going to start at the shoulder and keeping that keeping that burgundy color right up underneath his beard. We're going to pat that on, pat down next to that center fur trim. And then we're going to shade around the fur of his arm or his wrist area, shaping the arm shape on, again, that's all here on his chest. So we began here at the shoulder, rounded the beard, came around the fur, the top of the mitten, around the fur of his arm, and then we went around the arm shape as well. Then on the arm, we're going to shade like we did on this one. We shaded right up next to the cuff and the fur here on the cuff. We're going to add a little bit of shading on that same area. So that's all the shading we're going to do on Santa's robe. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to wipe my brush to remove that apple red and to remove that shading color. Now I'm going to start with a little bit of a highlight. So I'm going to put, again, that base color or the local color in my same number 12 flat brush. I did not wash it out. There's no water in my brush. It's just red paint right now. I'm going to side load into my pure orange, and we're going to use this pure orange to give our little red areas some highlights. So let's look on his first arm that we worked on. And the top part here where we have no shading, we're going to just pat on some of our pure orange. We want to give a little bit of a highlight on the arm, and I'm showing you up close so you can see now it's a little bit brighter in the yellow, in the orange. Sorry, I had to take a sip. And now I'm going to continue loading my brush, keeping that pure orange and apple red mixture. And now we're going to, on this chest here, we're going to separate and really kind of highlight where the body is from the arm. So we added a little bit of orange there to separate the body from the arm. Down on this bottom part here, we're going to highlight on the outside edge here close to the tree. Again, this is still just the pure orange and the number 12 flat brush, and I'm patting some of that color in towards the jacket itself. On the opposite side of Santa, we're going to come out. I'm going to turn mine upside down because it'll be easier to stroke towards me. We're going to start here on this arm kind of like where the elbow is, and we're going to pat the outside of the arm. Again, this is the pure orange, and we're just kind of highlighting a little bit on the, like from the shoulder down to like the wrist area. All right. If you have enough space on yours right here underneath the arm, put a little bit of the pure orange there towards the outside and kind of work some of it in. If you've carried your shading down far, you may not have enough space to put a highlight here on that part of the robe, and that's okay if you can't. Okay, I'm going to show you mine up close. All right, now let's get some highlights on his hat. There's not a lot of the hat showing, but we will still put some pure orange on the very top of the hat, right where it comes close to your glass of the snow globe. And down on the tail on the opposite side that we did not shade. So as you're looking at your tail, it'll be the right-hand side of the tail and the top of the hat. And then what we're going to do is clean our red and our orange out of our brush. And we're going to pinch it tight. And then let's move on to our mittens. So what we want to do with our mittens is we're going to put the local color in. Again, that was our Thicket. So I've got a clean brush with just Thicket. I'm going to side load with just a little bit of our black. And that black again that I'm using is Licorice. So I've got Thicket on all of the brush and Licorice on just one side. What I'm going to do with the Licorice side of the brush is I am going to, on the mitten itself, put the dark color up next to the fur trim. I'm going to hold mine up so you can see there. So we've added the black to shade our dark mittens, and that is on the side of the mitten that goes right up next to our fur trim. While we have this brush loaded with our Thicket and our black, I'm going to go over and move to our tree. And our tree is going to have a darker shading at the top of each of these sections, right where it like casts a shadow. So working on my bottom one here, I'm just kind of floating and brushing on wet, kind of shading in some of that black on my tree. And then I'm just going across the bottom here, just darkening this section a little bit more. So the black was added right underneath this as a separation line. I'm going to do the same thing for the middle section. I've got my Thicket on my number 12 flat. I side loaded into the black, and I'm also going to pat that black on section number 2, or the middle section. And then I'm going to just deepen the rest of the tree with a little bit more of the green. And that is the Thicket that we're working with. And on the last section, we're going to darken at the top, but because this part is very close to the edge of our snow globe, we're just going to put a little bit darkening on that side too. And let me go ahead and wipe some of that out. And then I'm just going to fill the rest in with another little application of our Thicket. All right, that's all we're going to do for our shading, keeping it very simple. We're just going to keep those simple little shaded areas. Let's go ahead and add some highlight to our mittens. And the mittens again are going to be, I just squeezed some of the dark color out of my brush. I'm now loading it back with our base color. So I'm loading it with Thicket. I'm going to side load into our bright green here that I have. This is lime green. If you don't have lime green, any bright yellowy green color would work. There is a beautiful color called bright green that would work beautifully. Citrus green would work, yellow citron would work. So I have a brush that is loaded with the dark green and on one side, and then it's loaded with the brighter yellow green on the other side, and with that brightness towards the outside edges of our mittens. So again, that's the thumb and then across the mitten itself. I'm just patting some of that bright color on so that we're giving our mitten a little bit of a highlight. And there's 2 little mittens here, so it won't take very long. Just patting that color on. Now I'm going to clean my brush. And what I'm going to do next is we're going to go ahead and give our Santa his black belt. So if you look closely at the black belt, there's a big section here on, as you're looking at him, the left side, but don't forget the little section that's inside his buckle too. So I'm going to switch down to a smaller flat brush, and I'm using a number 6. And I'm just going to, again, kind of that trick of using your chisel edge to help you define your shape and your lines. I'm going to use that chisel edge and just kind of paint in. And if working on a flat brush is a little difficult for you, this is where you could switch and use your little liner if you want to. But try and use a big brush to kind of help you move along quicker. So I've got one section of my belt painted in black. And then I'm also going to paint in that inside of the belt buckle. Remember, I said, don't forget that. So carefully work around your mitten and carefully work around the shape of your belt buckle. Our belt buckle is going to be a beautiful paint that we make here at Plaid that's called Treasure Gold. It's the highest metallic gold paint on the market. It's water-based and it's beautiful when it's completed. So we're just going to leave that section there. So I'll show you up close.
Chris, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Carrie asks, is it okay if some of the white of the canvas doesn't get paint in the nooks?
You're talking about like when you were painting over areas, if you still see some of the weave of the canvas through?
I suppose, yeah. Yes, you said yes.
Okay, yes. It's okay. I think I don't have any in mine. I think mine's relatively covered up like the gloves, Carrie says. Okay, so like if you've got any speckles showing through the glove area, you know what, Carrie, it's probably going to be okay, because as you look at mine here, can you see he's in the snow, inside the snow globe? We're going to fly speck him or snow him. So if you have any little sections that didn't get completely covered, it's probably going to look like snow when we're all done. So I think you'll be okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, sure. All right. So now let's go ahead and start working on, let's see. Before we do our fur, I do want to have the background inside our snow globe done. So I'm going to add one more quick color to our palette, and that is the blue that was on your list. And this is Look at Me Blue. So we're going to use the Wicker white that we put out and the Look at Me Blue to kind of do the blue background here. And I'm going to use, let's use our number 12 flat brush. I'm going to load it with my Wicker white, and then I'm just going to pull some of the blue out. So I'm going to have some Wicker white on all of the brush, and then just the tip, I've got some blue pulled out on it. And so I'm going to just kind of do a little, what I kind of sometimes call a slip slap. I'm going to use more white than blue. So I'm picking up more, I'm going back and picking up more white now to kind of blend some of that blue in. Keep in mind, you want to use that chisel edge to kind of keep your circle straight of our snow globe. So you might even want to just do that first, like we've been doing. And then just lightly kind of create a mottled blue effect. You don't want it very, very dark, because you want this to look kind of like a sky. But you also don't want it too light, because remember, we are going to flex some snow in here. So we want the blue to be just right, just a Goldilocks right. So I'm going to go now around my tree and around the Santa in all of these spaces, just kind of filling in a combination of the blue and the white. Again, the blue I'm working with is Look at Me Blue. And the white I'm working with is titanium white. And I am just kind of create a mottled blue. I'm not really blending it in. I'm just kind of putting a very soft color all the way around Santa and the tree. All these open spaces here inside the snow globe. And so using, again, that trick of the chisel edge, you're going to be able to do this very quickly. I'm just kind of following around the shape of Santa's arm, around his beard, around that mustache that's sticking out there, around the hairline, around the fur. And again, it's just kind of a mottled, crisscross, slip slappy look. I don't want it to be very perfect. It's very, very modeled. That's a good term to use. It's very different, very shaped differently. And up here, I got a little pom-pom on the bottom of this hat yet to do. So leave a little room for your pom-pom. And go around the body. And again, I'm going to pick up a little bit more blue. Remember, like I said, we were going to fly speck with a little bit of snow. So we want to have a blue that's going to allow the snowflakes to show. This is nothing very fancy. It's just very simple, really. I'm going along the bottom of the fur of Santa's robe now, underneath the tree. And then I'm going to turn my piece so that I can make sure I get a nice curve of the globe itself here, patting on a combination of both the blue, that's Look at Me blue, and the white, creating that mottled effect. I hope y'all are having fun, those of you that are painting along with me tonight. And I cannot wait to see your pieces too. So be sure and save those hashtags and share them. And don't forget, when you do the snow globe, on the left side of the tree, there's a little bit of our round snow globe showing. So don't miss this little section over here. There's just a sliver up here on the top of the tree, and just a sliver, or maybe it's more like a little triangle shape here between section number 2 and section number 3. Okay. Now I basically have my blue in. I'm kind of happy with it, and we're going to let that dry for a little bit. Let's move on to our tree. We can start doing some of the areas that are going to be on top of the snowy part. So I'm cleaning my brush in the water, and then I'm pinching my paper towel to dry it out. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to switch to my liner brush. I like working with a number 1 liner. However, if you prefer the number 2 script liner, you may get that out. We're going to use the bright yellowy green color, which is lime green. My liner brush is filled with some water, and I'm bringing some water here over onto my palette. Then what I'm going to do is pull some of this lime green out to the water, and I am kind of mixing with my brush to thin that paint down. So the lime green is getting kind of more like what I would consider a juicy consistency. So I'm going to fill that brush good and full with juicy consistency. I don't know if it's going to focus for you. Juicy consistency, lime green. What we're going to do is we're going to now work on our tree, and our tree has long little line strokes starting at the bottom of each of our little sections, stroking up towards the top. So I'm going to turn my piece upside down, and I'm going to begin on the bottom level. So if you think about your tree from the point here, it's straight down this way, and then these sides are kind of coming in. So you might want to start right here in the beginning and kind of give yourself a push down with pressure, and then start releasing pressure and pulling up so that you get a fatter stroke where you start and a skinny stroke where you end the stroke. And then what you might want to do is go over to the edge here. And it's okay if you go a little bit on top of Santa's coat or keep your tree behind him. Either way, I'm going to touch down, apply some pressure. I'm pulling, and as I'm lifting and pulling, it comes to a skinny little stroke. So this is going to help you kind of base. I'm just going to put a little one here on this edge. This is going to give you the guidelines. If you'll put these 3 strokes in, then you're going to come back and fill in, kind of keeping that curve or in the middle here straight. So I'm going to now just do it very quickly. You got the tip, you got the idea. You're touching, pulling, lifting, getting a smaller skinny point at the end. Stop and refill your brush. And I'm going to come back in here where I have a little bit straighter one. And for each section, we'll do the same thing. So we're just touching, pulling, lifting, touching, pulling, lifting. And this is why it's so important to have your paint the proper consistency so that it will just kind of flow off of your liner brush the way you want it to. So I'm going to keep filling my brush when I feel like I'm getting dry. And a couple more and our bottom section is done. So see, I've got heavier strokes towards where we started. That was the bottom of each section. And they definitely get lighter as I go to the top. I'm going to add a little bit more water and thin down another little puddle of this paint. We want it juicy consistency. So for section number 2, let's go ahead and start in the middle. Do one stroke in the middle. And we'll do the 2 side strokes. This is again kind of mapping out the direction our stroke should go. So here we go again. I've got my 3 strokes on there. And then I'm just going to quickly fill in each of these little strokes, refilling my brush as I feel I need to. This kind of helps you remember the direction or the shape that these strokes should go in. So again, I'm starting on the edge, kind of curving a little bit, but then as I work towards the center, my stroke is going to be more of a straight stroke. If we didn't be careful with the direction of these strokes, our tree isn't going to look as though it's graceful. And there's my second section done. We're going to continue with the same concept with our third section. Again, we're going to start in the middle, do our 2 side strokes. And I kind of kept mine within the shape of the tree. But if you wanted to, you could always come back. Like here's an example. I can come on the outside here and give myself a couple more extra little branches if you wanted to. Excuse me. So going back to our top one, I'm just going to add a few more little strokes, a few more little branches. I taught a class one time how you can add snow to this type of tree too. So if you even want snow on your tree, I would let this completely dry and you can add some snow here at the bottom of each of the branches, but you need to wait and let that dry. Okay, let's move on. Let's do Santa's face real quick. I am going to clean out my liner brush and now I'm going to pick up that number 6 flat and I'm going to load it with the base color of his skin that we mixed up. And then while I have this flesh made up color in my brush, I'm also going to side load a tiny, tiny, tiny little bit of our red. We're going to make a little bit of a cheeky color. And I'm also going to add a little bit of orange. That same side of the brush where I picked up the red, I'm going to add just a tiny little bit of orange. So our cheeks are going to be a mixture of the apple red and the pure orange. And when you look at my Santa cheeks up close, I'm showing you my finished one if you want to look at the camera. Our cheeks are going to be towards the outside of his face. So we're going to go right here, kind of like a little L shape in the corner, along that hairline and around the top of his mustache. So that would be an example of what one cheek would look like on one side. We'll repeat that same process, kind of creating a little reversed L shape on the other side. And like I said, if you always put your base color in first, which is our flesh color, you're going to find that it blends so much easier and better for you. I'm going to clean that out and I'm going to pick up my liner brush and let's give our little Santa just a couple little dot eyes. So I'm going back to my liner brush and our black. I'm loading the tip of the liner brush with some black paint. And I just gave I'll show you my sample up close. My Santa just has 2 tiny little black circles for eyes. He's not fancy. He just has a little black circle and they could be as big of an eye or as small of an eye as you want. I'm going to make my little one there a little bit bigger. And here we go. So there's the eyes on my Santa. If it helps, hold the face to you so that you can see where the eyes should go. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, let's work on his beard. And, oh, wait a minute, I think we need to get this fur part. Let's do our fur first. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm skipping, but let's do the fur because I want this done here before we put the beard on top. So I'm going to use my number 12 flat brush, and I'm going to use the white as our base color. So I'm going to load my brush with the white, and then I'm going to dip a corner of it into some of our gray mixture. So I've got a brush that has a little bit of gray on it, but mostly white. And I'm going to turn the brush up so that I'm not working with it flat. I'm turning it so that it's up. I'm working with just a corner of the brush, and I am going to tap, 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 tap. I've got the gray part up. When I want to have some gray shading anywhere on the fur, I'll use the gray side down. So I'm going to flip my brush back and forth, and I'm just going to tap color on, and I am going to allow that fur to be furry. So if you want some of that to go extended out onto the mittens or onto the sky, onto the red of his coat, go ahead and let it get furry. You don't want to keep it nice and smooth. So his cuffs and his fur can be mostly white with a little bit of gray in it. Here's a good example of a cuff that I just did. So any of the fur areas, so that would be on the cuffs of his coat, also on the trim on his hat, his little pom-pom on his hat. This is the same technique we're going to do everywhere. So I'm using just the corner of that flat brush to kind of pat some of that color on, allowing the color to pat onto the other areas very unevenly.
Chris,
So
is this still your 6 brush?
This is my number 12, Stephen.
Got you.
Thank you. Yeah, I went bigger this time. Go big or go home, right, Stephen?
That's right. What for the, I'm trying to think of the word, the hanging branches of the tree. Do you remember what brush size you used for that?
You're talking about this lighter green stroke up?
Right.
I used my number 1 liner brush.
Got you.
And if you don't have a number 1 liner brush, the number 2 script liner would be fine to use as well. So what we're doing right now is creating that fur on his hat, the fur on his coat, and don't forget the little pom-pom on the side here. I'm using the white with a little bit of gray, and I'm just tapping that paint on to kind of create a textured fur. And so there will be gray in some areas, and some areas I'll flip the brush around and I'll get mostly the white. Stop and pick up the paint a little bit more if you want to make a little bit more texture. And I am allowing this little tapping motion to apply paint outside of the pattern lines, onto the blue sky, onto the red of his coat, anything that's nearby, onto his hairline. We want the fur area to not be smooth. We want it to look really furry. Every so often, pick up a little bit more of that gray mix and add some gray in here. Come back and add some white on top. I am very careful around this mitten that's by the belt buckle, because you want the fur underneath that rather than the fur to get up on that hand. So this fur, that section, the fur is underneath. And I'm almost done with my fur, and then we'll move on to the beard. I'm going to add a little bit of gray here underneath the beard area. And maybe a little bit more white down here. I'll hold mine up close if you want to take a quick look. So that's Santa with all the fluffiness of his beard, and I'm sorry, of his fur. All right, I think I'm happy with that. I'm going to go ahead and clean my brush and pinch it dry. All right, Now I'm going back to my #1 liner. That's the same brush that we did the green branches, if you will, of his tree. And that's what we're going to use for the beard. And we're going to do basically that same kind of a stroke. We're going to load our brush with some white. The white is going to be thinned a little bit. And we're going to start here in the center, like about where his mouth is. And we're going to start at the bottom and we're going to stroke up towards his mouth. And then as we work around the kind of circle, if you will, all of these strokes are going to be heading toward, they change direction. So they're going to start towards the mouth. Now we're going towards the mustache. Then we're going to go towards the sides of his face. Can you see how those strokes change direction as you move around in that circle? So again, this is my #1 liner brush. I am using a little bit of water to thin that paint to make it just like we did the paint for the lighter green of our trees. So I've got #1 liner. I've got some wicker white thinned with a little bit of water. And now I'm going to start that beard. So I'm going to stroke, like if I'm looking at mine, this will be our mouth area. I'm going to start here in the center and I'm going to stroke up towards that mouth. And then I'm going to do the same thing, moving those strokes around as we go towards the face, towards the mustache. We don't want these to be straight sticks all the way around. They're going to be moving towards Santa. So if you can see, this is what I'm starting to do here. And then I'm going to continue, even with the hairline, we've got strokes coming in towards the side of his face. And I'm going to do the same thing for the other side of Santa. Stop and reload your brush as you feel like you need to. The more pressure you use, the fatter your stroke is going to be. If you want skinny little strokes or strokes of hair, then you need to use less pressure on your brush. And as you're pulling in, if you get a little bit of the tail end of the stroke onto the flesh area, I don't think it's a problem at all because your hair is coming from his head or from his skin. So I've got my beard done and the sides, both sides of my head of hair. Let's work on his mustache. The mustache is just solid white. And I put a lot of paint on my brush when I start the mustache. I'm going to show you up close. There's a lot of paint. This is not twisted to get a point on my liner brush. I'm going to start at the nose area and I'm going to stroke out. So I'm imagining his nose is going to be here. I'm going to go above the cheek and I'm going to make his long mustache come out. You can make whatever shape mustache you want. And then I'm going to pull some out. And when I do the mustaches, sometimes you can see how much texture there is of the paint. Sometimes I allow there to be a lot more texture on the mustache because it actually is on top of the beard. The beard might not have as much texture as the mustache does. He's been grooming this mustache all year long for this one special night. So we need to make sure he has a really good looking mustache, right, y'all? I'm going to put a little bit more on this side. There we go. Now my mustache is complete. While we still have our liner brush loaded with the white, we need to give him some eyebrows. And they're just tiny little dots all run together using our liner brush loaded with our white paint. And I usually start at the inside of the eye and I just do little diddy dots, just tapping it very lightly, working towards the outside edge. So I'm going to just tap along. And remember, the eyebrows are kind of like a little rainbow shape. They do want to arc. And that's all there is to the eyebrow. So give him 2 eyebrows, starting at the center, and then just kind of tapping that white on towards the outside. There we go. Now his eyes need to sparkle. He needs to have a little glint or highlight in his eyes. And I'm going to touch down my liner brush on the black of the eye, on that licorice eye. And when I look at mine here that I've already got done, they're approximately, if you think about that as a face of a clock, there's 2 dots, 1 on each eye, and they're about 1 o'clock. So think about that black circle of his eye as like maybe it's a clock, and think about 1 o'clock and put the tiniest little dot on both eyes at 1 o'clock. Make mine a little bit bigger. There we go. And I can see when I made my first sample here, I made his cheeks a little bit rosier than what they are here. You know, it just depends upon how long Santa's been outside in the cold. If you want him to have really bright rosy cheeks, then give him a little bit more blush. Okay, let's move on. We're going to give him a little bit of a nose. I'm going to take this base color of our flesh, and we want to darken this down just a little bit. So I'm going to add a little bit of red to it to kind of rosy it up. Oops, that was a lot of red. I'm going to mix it here, and we're going to rosy it up, and then we're going to, there we go. Then I'm going to add just a tiny, tiny, tiny little bit of our black to it. And then I'm just going to put a tiny little circle of this color onto his nose. All right, now let's quickly move on. I'm going to take my number 12 flat brush. It's clean. It's got some water in it. It's damp, in other words. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get just a little bit of our Look at Me blue on the brush that has some moisture to it. And with Look at Me blue, I used a corner. I'm just blending here so that there's color on one side of the brush. What I'm going to do with this is I'm going to deepen the inside of our blue of the snow globe. Let me get just a little bit more blue so you can see it better. I can see it here, but it might not be showing up well enough for you at home. We're going to take that brush and we're going to just scoot it along the edge of our circle of our globe. And what we're going to do is just help to define the shape of that circle a little bit. This is the Look at Me blue with just a little bit of moisture of the water. And we're just going around the shape of the globe itself. This will also help when you get ready to fly speck for your snow. Okay, all right. Now let's quickly move on. I know we haven't done the belt buckle yet, but we'll save that towards the end. Let's move on real quickly and work on the base here. And this center little horizontal section is painted in completely solid with our apple red. I'm using my number 12 flat brush and that chisel edge again. Remember that technique. You can use that chisel edge to kind of give you a nice smooth area to block in the shape and then paint it in. Kind of using my outside of my brush to make these rounded shapes on the sides. And now we have a red section or a red border there. And then the bottom section, I'm going to leave it just the canvas itself. It's really white, but for time's sake today, we're going to leave this just the white of the canvas. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my small, let's see, what do I have here? I have a number 2 flat brush. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the handle end first to create some berries. So I'm going to take and put some apple red on the bottom of that brush. And we're going to create the berry dots here that are going to be part of our little trim here at the bottom. I'll bring it up close so you can see. Those berry dots are oh gosh, it's maybe half an inch apart from each other. So what you might want to do is start here in the center and make one little dot in the center, and then come out approximately a half an inch and do the same thing again until you come out to the very end. And I think I'll stop there. And then maybe a half an inch here and a half an inch here. I think I can maybe make one more that kind of looks funny without it. Okay, now what we're going to do is clean off the handle end of that brush. And we're going to use the number 2 flat brush, the bristle end of the brush now. So I'm going to load that with my Thicket. And what we're going to do is kind of create kind of like a little bit of a leaf stroke, stroking towards that berry. So I am starting a stroke here on the right and I'm stroking towards the left. So if it's easier for you to pull towards you, you may want to hold your work this way. You're going to start the stroke and then pull towards that red dot. You can also, if you want, wait and make sure your red berries are dry before you begin this. And what I'm going to do is I am going to use the brush not flat. Again, I'm going to go up on the corner and I'm going to touch down and then pull lift, touch down, pull lift. So it kind of looks like a rounded flat at the end of each stroke. So I'm going to get just barely one here because there's not a lot of space. The dark Thicket strokes that I'm doing now are only going to be on the bottom of each of these little berries, or this little section here. We're going to do a different color to create the top. So again, it's just the number 2 flat brush. I'm starting on the point or the corner of the brush, reloading my brush every so often. It's just solid Thicket. I'm starting the stroke and pulling towards the berry. And one more when the berry's off. And I'm going to make this one a little bit fatter. Make that one a little bit longer. Now, with the Thicket still in my brush, I'm now going to load the brush with another color, and that is our lighter green. So I want this brush mixture to be both the dark green and the light green. I'm going to do the same thing, not working with my brush flat. I'm going to turn it up on its end, and I'm going to create the other half of the green leaf, and I'm going to stroke down so that I can see some dark and some light green showing up in each of these little leaf strokes. And I'm stroking in towards the little berry. Apply pressure, pull, lift. And as I'm lifting, it's getting thinner and it's not as fat of a stroke. So it's just a matter of learning your pressure on your strokes. This again is the Thicket and the light green, lime green. There we go. And it gives you like a little holly berry kind of very simple effect. All right, let's scoot to the outside edge real quick. Or maybe we should paint the rest inside before we start handling the outside. Go ahead and get out, if you're painting along with me, your Treasure Gold. Treasure Gold is one of the pretty, oh gosh, I can't get this one open. Ah, there we go. I guess I didn't eat my Wheaties today, Stephen. Treasure Gold is by far the best metallic gold paint on the market. It is so luscious. It's beautiful. It's so great because it is water-based and it's just a gorgeous, gorgeous metallic paint. I used my palette knife to get some out onto my palette. So I am cleaning off my palette knife. While we have our number 1 liner, let's go ahead and do his belt buckle. And that's just simply a little square here. You probably have left yourself a little cheat line where it's supposed to be. If you didn't, it's okay. Just paint a little square. You're going to get 3 sides of that square. And then don't forget the belt buckle also has that little tongue. So we're just going to put a little bit of a line there in the center. All right. Now the Treasure Gold is also painted on this section here, the like base, the top part of the base of the globe. So you can use your number 8 flat brush And I'm just going to pinch mine, make sure it's dry. And I'm going to pick up the Treasure Gold. And I'm going to be very careful to make sure that I keep the circle shape here of our globe here at the bottom. And sometimes when I use metallic paints, I often will undercoat them a little bit with a color that's comparable. So like if you're doing a gold, you might start with a base of like a yellow ochre. And then when you put the gold metallic paint on top, it happens all in one coat. This, because I'm working against the white of the canvas, I think I would, because I want that brilliance of the metallic gold, I might let this dry and come back and give it a second coat. All right. Now, the next thing we're going to do, we'll still work one more little section of things on the inside here before we get to the outside. I don't want you handling that while you're still trying to work on the inside. My number one liner, and I'm going to use some of my black. Again, that's Licorice. I'm using some water to thin it down. I want a very juicy ink-like consistency. And what we're going to do, if you look at my Santa, everywhere that I have sections, I have kind of given him, especially around the fur, a wiggly line, but around the other areas, I've kind of given him a straight line. So basically what we're doing is we're outlining our Santa just to give him a little more contrast and to kind of help him show up a little bit more. So I'm going to have that thinned paint in my liner brush. I'm going to hold it straight up and down so that just the tip of my brush is making contact with the surface. So on that arm that I just did, I just outlined the top and the bottom of the arm. I'm going to outline over his coat here. Just work a section at a time. And when you get ready to do the fur areas, I'm going to give that fur a little bit of a raggedy edge to kind of make it look like it's got a little more texture. Just kind of wiggle. So here's like a wiggle section of what the cuff looks like.
Chris,
so again,
can you use this paint on cardstock? Because we had a couple people asking or saying that this image would make a great holiday gift card.
Oh, it sure would. Thank you for that. I just got my hand in a berry down here. Yes, it definitely would. This is FolkArt multi-surface paints. It's a paint that is beautiful on a multitude of surfaces. It works on wood, on metal, on tin, on glass, on terracotta, on the cardstock. It works on a variety of different surfaces. So I think doing this Santa image as a greeting card is absolutely wonderful. That's a very good question. Thank you for sharing that, Stephen. Okay, we're moving right along. Once you kind of get the hang of this outlining, it's really a key to know how properly to hold that brush and then also to have the paint the right consistency. This part really does kind of go pretty quickly. You can see I've just about got him lined up. When I do this wiggly part, scratchy part all around on the fur, it just really gives him a little bit more personality, a little more pizzazz. And I need to give him on his mitten out here an outline. And I think I even outlined the tree a little bit too and did a wiggly line here where the tree sections become sections. Oh, I think he would make a gorgeous greeting card. Okay. All right. So we basically now have outlined all of him. We need to give him a mouth. And what I did was I started with the black on my liner brush where the mustache meets, where the right and the left side of the mustache meets. We need to paint like a little bit of an open mouth. So right up into the center and pull down and make almost like a little triangle. I'm going to show you mine up close. Can you see that there's a little black triangle between the two mustaches? That's his open mouth. So I'm going to remove the black from my liner brush now and very quickly pick up a little bit of red. And if you still have your flesh, I don't. I'm going to pick up a little bit of white. we'll make a little bit of a pink for his lips. And the lip is just like almost outlining the underneath side. I'm going to put a little more red on there. Underlining the underneath side of that black line or that black triangle that we just created. There we go. So he's got an open mouth and he just has a bottom lip showing. All right, I think let's go ahead and do the line work on the bottom section. Liner brush, a little bit of water, thinned black, and we're going to outline this bottom section here of his snow globe base. And like I said, I think if I had mine at home, I would wait and let this dry, the gold dry one more and give it one more coat. And I'm just going to come around and outline this red of the base here. And just disregard where I put my thumb here in the one of the berries. I can clean that up. And outline this edge there. So now we have our, darken this a little bit. There we go. Now, eventually we will add a black line around the snow globe, but we need to get his outside done first. And so I'm going to now switch to working with white and our dark green, which was our thicket. So we're going to use our white and our dark green thicket. And I'm going to switch to my number 12 flat brush, load it really nice and full with my white. I'm going to side load a little bit into my thicket. And now I'm just going to create that same modeled effect like we did the inside of our snow globe with the blue and white. We're going to do that all the way around the whole entire outside edge. Now, when you look at mine, you notice that it's darker around the edges here. And then I also have it darker around the base here on the bottom of our snow globe. That will happen after this first part is dry. So don't try and do the dark corners now. Just go ahead and paint the white and the green in a very haphazard kind of modeled effect. And you'll keep picking up paint as you go along, just like we did that blue of the inside. And you'll see that you can have colors blend without being a solid blend. It's more like a milky, streaky effect, if you will. It's what I kind of sometimes call blending the two colors on the brush at the same time, a slip slap technique. That's really what we want to do here all the way around the outside edge. Use that chisel edge to go up next to any part that you've already got done, like as an example, the snow globe itself. You want it to be a modeled effect. You want to see some brush strokes. You want to see some lighter areas, some darker areas, but you know, all in all, it's not very dark. It's just the beautiful thicket and white kind of blending together. And you'll do this all the way around the whole snow globe, creating that outside effect. You can make it as dark or as light as you want. I started out very light, and then the darkness will come in just a few moments.
Chris, can you repeat what green again?
Yes, I sure can. It's thicket. I'm using my white and my darker green of the two greens, and that is the thicket. And I'm just kind of putting that color on and then kind of bouncing my brush around, if you will. And I'm just kind of half lightly mixing the colors. I just had to add a little bit more white to my palette. We're coming along nicely. I know we're running a little bit past our time. I hope you all are still with me. There's not too many more steps left to go. So we're nearing the end. Thank you for hanging in, those that are. Cannot wait to see your projects. Again, remember to use those hashtags. That's Make It With Michaels and hashtags Michaels Classes, hashtag Plaid Crafts. And I welcome you to join our Facebook group here in Plaid. We have a fabulous Learn to Paint Facebook group that's called Let's Paint with Plaid. And you can use our hashtag, which is Let's Paint Challenge. It all runs together, no spaces, no extra little dots or punctuation. It's just all the words run together. Check us out on Facebook. That is the Let's Paint with Plaid Facebook group. We have so much fun there. We teach many classes. And I welcome you all, if you're not yet a member, to join us. We have classes every Tuesday and Thursday at noon. They are free. It's called Lunch and Learns. Okay, I think I've got about my colors on here. Kind of modeled some green. Again, that's my Thicket with some of my white. And I'm going to let that dry just a second. And then I want to show you how I darkened a corner, but I need to let that dry a little bit. All right, so while that is setting up and drying just a little bit, let's talk about our snow that's going to happen on the inside of the snow globe. I'm going to use a toothbrush, and I'm going to do a technique that we call fly specking. And to fly speck, I need to have my tooth bristles wet. So I'm going to dip it into my basin of water first. And you can see here, there's some puddles of water on the palette. I've got water coming out of the brush, and I'm going to dab some of my wet bristles into my puddle of my white paint. And what I'm going to do, let's see if I have something I can do it on, you can see color wise. I don't know if you'll be able to see against white paint or white. Let's see, I'll try it. No, you're not seeing it. I'm sure. Here, I've got this. Okay, so I've got a printout of what the photography was for today's class. So what I've done is I've thinned my paint using the water that was in the bristles of the toothbrush. And you want that paint thinned. Again, it's a Goldilocks situation. You don't want it too runny and too soupy. You'll get great big, huge flakes of snow or dots of color. If you don't have enough moisture in there, you're going to get tiny little specks, and it won't even look like snow at all. So there's a happy medium, and the best thing to do is to try it out on something. So I use my thumb and I run the bristles across my thumb. You could also, if it's easier for you to set something down, and use your second hand and run the bristles across your forefinger if you want. But what I'm going to do to test it, always test on the side before you go to your project, is I'm going to hold the bristles down onto my surface, and I'm going to run, let's see if I can get it closer. There. I'm going to run the bristles across my thumb. And can you see the little flecks of snow that I just added onto this printout? So this is what we want to do. And we want to do it so that it's just on the inside of the snow globe. If you get a little bit out on here, you can quickly dab it or wipe it away, or you can do a trick that we call masking. So you can then set a paper towel here on the side. And let's say I don't want to go beyond that side, but I don't want some on my tree. I can use the paper towel to mask the areas. Let me just show you up close. You can see some snow is now starting to happen inside the snow globe. So that's your next step, is to just put snow on the snow globe, and you can make him as snowy as you want or as little snow as you want. And use a paper towel to kind of help you with that masking. When I sparkle or sprinkle the snow, I'm fly specking, I tend not to put too much on his face, because you just want your Santa character to show well. But I do make sure that the darker colors, like his robe or the tree, that they get plenty of snow so that it shows up really well. Okay. All right, I've got mine all snowed. I like the way it's looking. You can see snow on his coat. You can see snow on the tree. This is really fun. And I'm sorry the class is taking long. Was that Judy that just said that? I just had so much to share. All right, then the next thing we're going to do, my corners are dry. I'm going to take that same number 12 flat brush. I'm going to get a little bit loaded on the corner. And with this Thicket, I'm just going to pat that color on so that we are shading these corners and a little bit around the snow globe like I did here on this one here. And what we're doing, because we're darkening our corners, this is a technique that helps draw your eye towards the center of your project. So we want the hero to be Santa in the snow globe. So you're going to darken your areas. Again, that's my number 12 flat brush. It is loaded with a side load of our dark green. And I'm just patting that dark green color on the edges of my corners here. So you will do that all the way around your whole outside edge and then around the base. And I did it maybe about up to the tree into the coat here. So it's darker just primarily up to here. Then you can outline the circle of your snow globe with the black. And then if you want to add the ho, 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 you don't have to, but if you want to add them, they are on the pattern that was given you. You can put either do them freehanded, if you're not comfortable with freehanding, put it back down, trace and transfer the HO for the ho, ho, ho. What I did to paint those is I used either a small flat brush or you can use your number 1 liner. And the letters are all painted solid with our apple red and then the bottom of each of the letters. So as I turn it around and I'm stroking from the bottom of the letter up to about halfway point, I'm going to stroke up with our deep burgundy that we mix. So it's almost like an ombre effect. It's the, and as I'm looking at it right side up, it's the apple red to the top of the letter and it's the burgundy stroking up. So it's lighter at the top, darker at the bottom. And that's how I painted each of my ho ho hos. Any questions at this point, Stephen? Because I think that's about running through all of the questions. I mean, all of the instructions.
Is the bottom of the base gold as well, like under the holly leaves?
What I did there is I just added a highlight of the gold on the top of this base. Mostly it's white underneath here, but I just rounded the edges and the top where it runs across where the red is. And then this whole section here is the treasure gold.
Got you.
So I did not do it on mine, but I can do it real quick. My treasure gold's, yeah, my treasure gold's still good. I side loaded with treasure gold and I have to make sure these are dry. Yeah, I just came around the top. Let me hold it up so you can see the top of this and around the edge here. So it just kind of tied in the gold that's here to the gold that could be down there. And I just went across the top here of this edge. It's mostly the white here at the bottom of this base. And then a little bit here on this outside. I want to make sure this is all dry though before I start smearing it. There we go. So that's all I did there. And that just kind of tied in the bottom of the base to our middle section here. And again, like I said, I think I would put one more coat of our treasure gold here just to really define that beautiful metallic gold. So the only thing I have not yet finished on mine, but I've talked about and demonstrated was I didn't darken all of my corners and darken around this base up to about Santa's coat on this side and up to the tree on this side. And then with my liner brush and the thinned black, I would outline the shape around of our globe. And then of course my ho ho hos. There again, apple red and the burgundy at the bottom. Any other questions? I hope everyone's had a good time tonight. I cannot wait to see everyone and how you painted your projects tonight. It's been a lot of fun sharing this project with you. For those of you that were time watching, let me say that I'm sorry if we did run almost a half hour over our normal scheduled time. So I hope you enjoyed this project and do take a picture, share it, become a member of the Let's Paint with Plaid Facebook group. And I hope you all have a wonderful, blessed holiday season. If there's any other questions?
No, everybody's saying thank you. And they had a wonderful class and they had such a good time. So yeah, I think we're good.
I just saw no apologies needed. Thank you for that. It's always fun to share painting talents with each and every one of you. And I cannot wait to see yours. So have a great time painting. Ho, 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 Santa in the snow globe. So until next time, I hope you all have a great, great holiday season. Thank you for joining me tonight. Merry Christmas.